Hey trappers, welcome back to my shed. It's only a couple days out here till the start of the Pennsylvania trapping season. I'm ready to rock and roll, and I figured I'd take some time to do a video for all you guys and girls about night latching. I'm going to try to cover the benefits of night latching, and I'm going to also take you here on my bench and show you what I feel is the best way to file a quality night latch in your pan notch. So stay tuned, and we're gonna try to cover it all here on night latching. All right. First off, what is night latching? And if you're new to trapping, the term might be something you've never heard before. But all it really is you file a small secondary notch in your factory pan notch. Just a squared off, smaller notch at the end of your factory pan notch. And by doing that, it allows you to set your trap, and wherever your pan is, up high or whatnot, it gets you a repeatable, consistent way to get a short pan throw without having to without having to visually inspect how deep your dog is in your pan notch. And that's where the name night latch comes from. You could set the trap and get the pan level and on a short throw in the dark at nighttime. You could do it with your eyes closed. I'll show you right now. You'll hear an audible click when that dog engages that smaller second notch, the night latch. I'll show you some close-up pictures of what the notch should look like. Okay, like I said, the main benefit, which most everybody knows and understands, is that the trap can be set and get a short throw, a repeatable, consistent short pan throw without actually visually looking where the dog is located in the pan notch. But another benefit, that it's something that I've done for many years, and I've shown in demos and whatnot. How I bed a trap is I actually bed, all my traps are night latch, and I bed on a high pan. Once I get the trap in the bed, I will put my left hand underneath the pan like so, and I'll actually, now this is not my trapping hammer, this is just a hammer I have on my workbench here. I'll pound soil at certain areas around that trap to bed it solid. It's a real quick and easy way to get a good solid bed. And I'll remove my hand, and I can just use my thumb and forefinger just kind of as a safety net, that if the trap would go off, it wouldn't catch me. And I'll just pull the pan down into position. And so basically I bed traps on a high pan, and you really couldn't do that without a night latch. One of the main reasons I don't like the Montgomery style dogless is because that trap, the pan is basically in one position when it's set, and I can't get my hand under it to bed with a high pan. Okay. Some people will argue that, and some trappers do this, they will take a file and they will file that factory pan notch off very, very short There's just a tiny lip there of a notch to engage the dog with. And I feel that doing that, that's called short notching. I believe short notching has some negatives, and night latching is a better way, in my opinion, to tune your traps. First thing why I like night latching as opposed to short notching. When you set well, first off, like I said before, you cannot set on a high pan. I wouldn't be able to get my hand under there to bed with a short notch trap. But this is something else, and it's also pretty important. When you set a night latch trap, you are setting the trap with downward pan movement. It sets with downward pan movement. When you're setting a short notch trap, you'd push the pan up to engage it into the dog. Now, you might say, what does that matter? Well, if you have any slop in the holes where your pan bolt goes through, that can make excessive drop. We call that pan creep. And if you are setting your pan on a downward motion, if there is a little bit of slop in those bolt holes, those screw holes, that slop is taken up as you're depressing that pan. Now this trap, I drilled it out and I replaced it with a number 10 brass pan bolt. But if there would be slop there, you would have that about taken up in about that much of the downward motion, and all that slop would be gone before you get to your night latch. Like I said, that is not the case with a short notch trap. When you set that pan with an upward motion, you have to go through all of that slop when the pan is depressed downward before it disengages the dog. Another thing that I'll try to explain here is with a night latch trap, the point at which the dog engages the notch, it doesn't change the relationship at that point to where the pan pivot point is. And the pan pivot point is obviously the bolt hole. That's what the pan pivots on. And as you can see, the end of the pan notch, where the dog would be, where you would make your night latch, is directly above center of that hole, of that pivot point. Now you short notch that, and you move that point of engagement that way. You basically move it to the left of the pivot point. And what that does is it's just like the posi trip pan system that have legs. It changes the engagement point. What that does is that will add a little bit of pan tension to your trap, which it really doesn't matter on a land trap if you're canine trapping. But if you want to, say you have mink traps and you want to tune your mink traps, in my opinion, a night latch is a far better way to tune your mink trap pans than a short notch, just simply because the short notch could add a little bit of pan tension. So yeah, like I said, the night latch, you have a repeatable, consistent short throw for your traps. The pan travel is minimal. Because it gives you the audible click, you don't need to visually inspect where your dog is engaged in the notch. Like I said before, I like the fact that I have an option where I'm going to position my pan while I'm bedding the trap. I like to bed on a high pan. When the trap is set and it's pulled down in the night latch notch, the pan is set in a downward motion. Like I said, that takes up any slot that you're going to have in those pan post holes or the pan shank hole. If there be any slop there, that will eliminate that. And lastly, like I said, the point at which the dog engages the notch is directly above the pivot point. It won't change your pan tension at all. All right, I just want to start by saying I'm going to get into showing you how I go about actually filing the night latch. But I want to start out by saying I have seen a lot of butchered pans over the years, tailgater sections, guys selling off used traps, pans that are just destroyed from guys filing on them trying to put a night latch in them. And some of that is probably due to the fact that you can file some pans with a certain size file and it works, but it's not a one-size-fits-all deal. Every pan notch is different. Some have a little wider than others, and it's very hard to find the perfect size file for every trap pan. So I learned to do it the way I'm going to demonstrate here, and it probably takes a little more skill, but once you do it, you're going to add value to the trap instead of more or less ruining the pan, and the next trapper that buys that trap that knows what he's doing or she's doing is going to have to go buy new pans sometimes to night latch them the correct way. And since it's really finite work, it's really hard to see. It's really hard to see what a notch actually looks like, but I'm going to try to explain it here with these crude drawings I made with a Sharpie. The worst thing you can do when you're filing a night latch is file it too steep. And there's a twofold negatives to that. First off, over time, metal wears, especially where two metals engage each other, and you might have to touch it up with a file, your night latch notches every couple years or whatever, and you take away that much metal when you file that night latch notch too steep. You take away that much metal, you don't have a whole lot left to touch it up. But the big negative is, and this is the bottom of the main notch, when you bring that pan down, that dog can actually, when it leaves that point, it can actually skip, because it's so steep, it can actually miss your night latch notch. It's the worst situation. And now here, it's filed too deep, which that's not as bad. It's easy to fix. You can just file a little bit of the end off there. But you're going to have a lot more pan travel before your trap fires. Some guys file a deep night latch for water traps, and that's fine. But I just wanted to bring that to your attention, that most canine trappers would not want a very deep. It kind of defeats the purpose of making a night latch if you're going to make it so deep. But this should be the correct way to file a night latch. You don't want it too steep. You don't want it too deep. Everything's squared off nice. You want your night latch notch square, and you definitely don't want it more than half of your notch high, because it starts to get into this too steep situation then. Just keep in mind, you want your night latch notch as small as possible. You do not need much of a notch to get that audible click when you bring the pan down. Don't butcher your pans. Don't butcher your pan notches. Learn how to do it right and make your night latch notch as small as possible, and you're going to be happier with it. And someday your kids or grandkids who inherit your traps are going to be happier with it, or if you sell your traps, the guy who buys them is going to be happier with it. Now here's how I night latch a trap pan. First off, you take your pans off your traps. It's a lot easier to do when you remove them from the trap than trying to do this when they're on the trap. But I start my notches with a small, thin cutoff wheel on a Dremel tool. And most traps that have a pretty decent notch from the factory, I don't bother trying to square it up or do anything before I start my notch with that, because all of that'll come when you do all that squaring up when you're finishing off and actually making your notch with the file. But now, saying that, I know some of the Bridger traps, their pan notch comes kind of to a point. I do file that off first. It's really hard to night latch them without getting a good squared off face on it first. So, but Dukes, Victors, most anything else out there has a pretty good pan notch that you don't have to worry about squaring that up until after you have your initial notch made with your Dremel. And it's not going to be really a notch what I made with the Dremel. It's more of just a dimple, that I can get the file in there to square it off real nice. What I'm going to make with the Dremel, you wouldn't be able to set the trap on it. It's just to take a little bit of the material away so that you can get the file in there. Let me move my camera just a tad so I can show you exactly what I do. Okay. I bring the pan to the edge of my workbench, like so, and I kind of worked off to the side so I can see what I'm doing. Takes pretty good eyesight to do this. And turn my Dremel on, and I actually use my middle. I hold the Dremel with these two, my thumb and forefinger, and I use my middle finger to steady myself, this part of my middle finger, to steady myself up against the table. Hold your disc on a little bit of an angle. And just kind of touch it, and that's it. And then, this is a 6-inch file. I hold it about like that. And you just start squaring it off. Like I said before, once you have your notch started, you can worry about squaring it off. All right, there you go. That is done. I hope it shows up in the camera. That right there is about perfect. Duke traps are really easy to get a good night latch on. And this is a Duke pan, but as you can see, it's not too steep, not too deep. Everything's nice and squared off. The trap that this pan goes on is going to have value added now. One more note. I see some guys, since I'm talking about butchering traps, I see a lot of guys grinding the sides of their pans and whatnot. They have reasons for doing that, I'm sure. But when I go through a tailgater section and I see traps all ground on, I'm turned off a lot of times by it, because a lot of guys out there really mess their traps up when they're trying to tune them and modify them. And that's kind of some of the reason why made the decision to make some of these YouTube videos. I just want to try to help some guys out and girls out on, you know, in their trap shed, working on their traps, and make their traps perform better for them on their line, and you know, do them the right way, so you don't hurt the value of them. All right. Thanks again, guys, for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already. And anything, like I've said before, anything you'd like me to cover that I know a little bit about on the subject, I'll gladly, you know, try to put a video together for you. So thanks again for watching. Until next time, have a good one.